A Maryland couple is facing an investigation for neglecting their children after they allowed their 10-year-old and their 6-year-old to walk home for about 1 mile from the park. Now, apparently, someone had seen the children walking alone. They alerted the cops, and at that point, the cops had gone to the parents' home and questioned them, and now they're being invested by Child Protective Services. Now, the couple is Danielle and Alexander Meitiv, and Danielle says, "We wouldn't have let them do it if we didn't think they were ready for it," talking about their children walking. And apparently they've, walked around the block before, and they've walked to a 7-Eleven before, and with no incident, okay? And usually they carry a card that says that they are not lost, that they're free-range children. Apparently, free-range children is a thing. And
Free-range, it's not just for chicken anymore.
So I'll get to that in a second.
They are grain-fed.
They're organic children.
Yes.
I have 2 of those.
But on this particular day, unfortunately, the children weren't carrying the card. I don't think that would have deterred Child Protective Services, but nonetheless, they didn't have the card. Now, let's get to the free-range part of the story, which is fascinating. So the couple say that they believe in free-range parenting, a movement that has been a counterpoint to the hypervigilance of helicopter parenting. Danielle says, "The world is actually even safer than when I was a child, and I just want to give them the same freedom and independence that I had, basically an old-fashioned childhood. I think it's absolutely critical for their development to learn responsibility, to experience the world, to gain confidence and competency."
So there's 2 parts that I disagree with the parents on, and on the rest of it, I'm 1,000% with them. Okay, like calling it something feels really goofy to me. Like, you want to let your kids walk home a mile? Let them walk home. But like saying they're free-range children, if you want to say chicken every time, right? I don't know. It feels like now all of a sudden I'm a hippie, right? Like I'm some sort of I don't love that, right?
There's nothing wrong with being a hippie, but it's just using the phrase free-range for kids just makes it seem like you're belittling them, like they're objects.
Yeah, it's just tiny point.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. And in fact, they're right to have the cards normally, so that people don't freak out, right?
Yeah.
So I get that, right? And now when Child Protective Services wanted to come, these guys wouldn't let them in the house, and they were really offended and all that stuff, right? That part I disagree with, because Child Protective Services is investigating it. Let them investigate it, and then if they rule against you, then I'm 1,000% with you, and I'm ready to go to war, right? But the guy's got to do his job. Somebody called, invite him in, have him sit down on the couch and say, "Hey, you know what? My kids walk home. Hey, didn't you used to walk home from school? Oh, yeah, I used to. That's right. What was it, about a mile? Yeah, it was about a mile. Okay, now get the fuck out of here."
Yeah.
Right? And then we're done with it. But like they're making it more of an issue when they don't let the Child Protective Services guy come in the house and investigate it properly, yada, yada.
Now, since they didn't allow the Child Protective Services social worker come in, he or she actually showed up to the children's school to interview them, which I don't know. I just feel like it's so intrusive and.
Yeah, again, I'm not. Look, you're going to see in a second. I'm massively on the side of the parents, but on this one again, I'm not with them because how does Child Protective Services know? Maybe it's because they have a philosophy, as it turns out they do, and maybe it's because they're neglectful and they were smoking crack, right? And they're like, "Oh shit, you found my kids? Oh, thank God," right? Then you got an issue. But the guy has to talk to the kids and talk to you before we can make that determination.
I just find it interesting that this is one of the issues that not only alerted authorities, but now you have CPS involved. Just because, I mean, relatively speaking, this is such a minor thing. Like, I can totally understand, like, telling parents, like, look, you got to be careful. It's only a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old. Someone could abduct them. You never know. We live in a crazy world. But it's kind of blown out of proportion. And then I think about like the parents out there who are doing meth while their kids are inside the house. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, some of those people get investigated too, but there are so many terrible parents out there. It seems like these parents are actually really good parents, and they're both very educated. One of them is a climate science researcher, and they seem like good people. You see what I'm saying?
Well, first of all, to your point about the free range, I think you can call them free range if you live on a ranch and you just go, and they just walk around, eating wheat or something all day. Anyway, that's that. But the other thing I noticed, their names, I don't know, but their names sound Eastern European or Russian.
Yeah.
Meitiv, Alexander. The Russians are tough. I mean, they should have just been like, sorry, in America, you don't let pussy children walk. For us, For us, we walk. When I was a kid in Siberia, I walk in snow, barefoot, back. You know that. You know what I'm saying? Like they're Russian. We used to wrestle on the way to school all the time.
With bears.
Yeah, people attack me. I stab. It's okay. Don't worry. You know, like that should have been. They should have been like, you know what I'm saying? Like they should have put him at ease. We're Russian. It's okay. That's the other argument I would have made if I were them. That said, I live in Los Angeles. I don't know where these people live, but I live in Los Angeles, and I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. Mm-hmm. I don't let them 2 feet. I'm like, and I'm not a helicopter parent. It's just I mean, if you live in a neighborhood that's neighborhoody, you can do this. But if you live in a city, nowadays, first of all, at the park, every dude that's there alone is a creep. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you here alone? Like, that's how I am. I'm hyper, like, in that way. But that aside, you know, my 4-year-old, and this kid was 10 and 6, right? My 4-year-old, I did this. You don't think about it, but we were coming from the park near La Cienega, and they wanted to race, and I go for it. And I'm not thinking about this is La Cienega, northbound traffic during rush hour, and they start running. They're both on the sidewalk. They're running, and the 4-year-old thinks she wants to get ahead. So there's a bus bench there. Instead of staying to this side on the sidewalk, she starts going this way to go and like sit on the bench. But I had a heart attack because I'm seeing my kid running in, and I gave this guttural like, Mila, stop. And I was like, what the hell was I thinking? And so my point is, if you live in a city like we do, there's different ways of parenting than if they're like somewhere in a neighborhood. So I don't know what kind of neighborhood they're in.
Yeah, all I know is they're from Maryland, and Montgomery County police, Montgomery County officials are investigating this. So the CPS in that area is investigating this.
So it's a little bit outside of Washington. I mean, you can even call it part of Washington, D.C.
Right.
So, again, you might be right. If you go, there are some areas that are more like the suburbs in Washington. There are more that are like the city, right? Look, I don't know about you guys, but my parents, I guess I was a free-range child and I didn't know it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I got home and I was gone, and then nobody's paying any attention. I went to go play kickball at Dope's house, right? And I wouldn't come back for 4 or 5 hours. Because we played kickball, then we played wiffle ball, and then we drank iced tea, and then and then I came back home. I left at at 3. I'd come back at 7 to eat dinner, and so I guess I was free range. And I walked to elementary school. I walked to junior high. I walked to high school. I walked to the bus. So this is what we did. This wasn't you wouldn't call Child Protective Services because you'd have to call it on every single house in the whole city, right? So I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make it right. But to me, it seems crazy.
I think a 10-year-old is fine. I think a 6-year-old, that's pushing it. Like, I wouldn't let my 10-year-old shepherd my 6-year-old around the city.
No, Jimmy, you're right, and I get.
I would let a 10-year-old, though. That's okay.
10-year-old Russian kid, though. That's like
Definitely.
a 22-year-old.
I still
like the badass.
I still like the idea of CPS writing, it's okay, they were Russian.
Yeah.
They were Russian. So, I get where you guys are coming from, because I wouldn't do it. Even though I'm on the parent side, like with my 10-year-old, 6-year-old in LA, oh yeah, go ahead, walk around for a mile. No way. But the reality is that the mom here, Danielle, she's right. It is safer now than it used to be. But when we were walking around the neighborhoods, there were serial killers and chop shops in the basement and stuff, right? Like, we just didn't know it. Now we know it more.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. The information age that we live in now, because we come from a free range generation.
Right.
I was like you. We just go. We used to hitchhike.
Yeah.
Nobody cared.
Remember that?
Hitchhike. Now you watch enough Frontline. You're like, oh, I'm not hitchhiking. I'm gonna get cut up. I'm not hitchhiking.
Right.
I'm not picking up a hitchhiker. I'm not hitchhiking. We live in this world where, because of the internet and what have you. I mean, my wife constantly will find something online. Like when Ebola was going, like she was like, you got to be careful. She was freaked out about the Ebola, but that's because there was so much an abundance of that information coming. So now you read a couple of stories about something like that, and we're freaked out. But you're right, that stuff existed back then. Those are the guys who came out later, as the coaches and the teachers and whatever they were.
Like, if you're Child Protective Services, do you say they did something wrong? Do you mark them down? Like you see what I'm saying? Like, do you say you're not allowed to do that?
I don't know. I don't know is there the science on it? Are there studies how kids should be left alone? Or
No, Jimmy, you wandered into the wrong show. This is the Young Turks. You don't need science. Just make a decision.
No, it seems like what they were doing wasn't neglect. What they were doing was intentionally trying to help their kids grow. So
Yeah.
neglect would be if they didn't care and they just saw they didn't know where their kids were, what was happening. That's neglect. This isn't neglect. This is just parenting that CPS might not find appropriate.
So you disagree with them, but you would let them do it.
Yes. I disagree with them, but I would let them do it.
And they could leave them with a slap on the wrist and go, listen, guys, it's fine that you want to do this, but like you were saying, hey, there are whatever. They might even be able to scare them a little, scare them straight. Be like, there's a couple of registered sex offenders. I'm sure there are in every neighborhood.
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. Yeah. So listen, just to be safe, next time, just keep an eye on them.
Yeah. Yeah, I would hope that it works out that way. I mean, it would be crazy if they keep investigating them and I don't think they're going to get their kids taken away.
No,
Again,
I'd go nuts if they did.
Yeah.
So look, I wouldn't give them a slap on the wrist. I wouldn't do anything. I'd say you did make your own decision, right? They're your kids. They're not my kids. You're not neglecting them. If anything, you've put a lot more thought into it than the average parent has.
Right.
So you're actually very mindful in trying to give them the best experience you can in your own way.
And then the kids end up molested in someone's basement.
Right. But that's not on me. That's on them.
I had a guy do that when I was a freshman in high school. So how old was I, 13? We were walking home from the bus stop, and this guy, I still remember, it was a red Camaro. And he came out and he had $20, and he goes, and it was me and my friend, and he goes, hey, I'll give you $20, you let me suck your dick.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, I was 13.
Wow.
And man, that was the most
What'd you
money I'd
say?
seen up to that point. So